It's me, Mike Messier. As wrestling fans, I think sometimes what happens is people watch WWE. Let's just talk about WWE for now. This is pretty much just WWE. People watch WWE and they think, well, it's got to make sense, or it's, they have to do things in such a way that makes sense to me, or morally kind, or ethically based, or the good guy is always going to win, or they're going to treat their employees fairly. But I think what people forget, or what they don't know, is that if the WWE, whether it's a publicly traded commodity company or not, or you have a family now, the McMahons and Triple H, and so on and so forth, it all comes down to Vince McMahon. You listen to any of these broadcasts, and they always defer to Vince McMahon. So if you look at Vince McMahon, and you say, well, this is a guy that in a Playboy interview 15, 20 years ago basically said that he alluded to the idea that he might have been sexually molested, which is horrible. He alluded to the fact that he was a victim of abuse as a child, which is horrible, of course. And he kind of took great pride in referencing that he probably cheated on his wife, or he did cheat on his wife. And a guy whose moral convictions or moral compass is probably not the same for most fans watching wrestling, and probably not the same for most people watching this little blog of mine. So if we watch wrestling and if we're somehow expecting the company itself to be based on morality, or why would they do this, what ethics take place when they do that, you're basing it on the guy who leads the company, who more or less the owner of the company, however you want to phrase it, Vince McMahon, who's a sick puppy. And I don't say that out of disrespect to what he experienced, or any type of condemnation on anybody for experiencing any hardship as a child. In fact, quite different. It's more like empathy or sympathy. But what I'm saying is, why do we as wrestling fans expect some moral compass or some ethics from WWE when Vince McMahon himself is a terribly wounded guy? You know what I mean? If you look at this guy, Vince, just do a little research, and just what goes through that guy's head must be a roller coaster. And people talk about that he's terribly motivated and terribly driven and terribly this and terribly that. He competes with his own yawns. I think it was Paul Heyman, or his belches or something, or his sneezes. It was his sneezes. Vince doesn't like to sneeze because he thinks he's wasting 2 seconds of his life. That's all well and good. But if you're watching wrestling and expecting some type of morality play to come out the way that you would have your morals come out, don't expect that with WWE. That's not what Vince is capable of at 72 years old, or whatever he is. If you're watching this product expecting to get something out of it, as far as morality or ethics, or expecting wrestling to somehow match up with your ethics, whether it's how they treat women or minorities, it's just not going to happen. So that's just my thought. So just as a fan, kind of look at wrestling differently and say, we're watching the vision of a madman, meaning Vince. We're watching the vision of a severely affected individual who's made pretty good for himself for a guy who's insane. You could say the same thing about a lot of people, Trump, so forth, or whoever the fuck, so that's it. That's basically this little statement. As far as other things, just, wrap some ties up, I guess. People still have issues with what I've said for a while, which is, if you support WWE or NXT, you support Donald Trump. How much clearer can it be? Donald Trump employs Vince's wife, Linda McMahon. You support WWE with your $9.99 a month, or your t-shirts, or whatever you're purchasing from them. And so you're kind of in collusion with Trump. And people get upset about that. Don't mix wrestling with politics. Well, if that's how you feel, then why are you supporting a company that supports Trump and is in bed with Trump? He's in politics, So you try to tell people simple things, point out the obvious, and it's just the typical kill the messenger type of thing. As far as Ring of Honor and their political things, that's something to look into. As far as this Bullet Club thing, I don't really have much of an opinion on it. I mean, I feel like it's funny if the Young Bucks, I've seen them wrestle live. I wasn't terribly impressed. I mean, I basically just sat through them doing super kick after super kick, and I guess that's the point. It doesn't really do much for me to see a couple guys just do 30 super kicks in a match. Call me old-fashioned, but maybe do one super kick match and a bunch of other moves. But I guess people like them for super kicks. And I do like the fact that they do have a tag team that is tag team specialists, as they used to say about the Rockers. Speaking of which, Marty Jannetty and his terrible stuff, it's just so beyond comment. But just to say anything, it's just a weird situation with Marty Jannetty and what he's going through or what he's putting out there for people. It seems like a cry for help or a cry for intervention. It's just one of those things that's unseemly. Beyond that, in the wrestling world, Bubba Ray Dudley retiring or having to retire because of concussions or severe head injuries. Bubba Ray Dudley was a great wrestler. Had the chance to meet the guy once or twice back in way back when. It was always a very respectful guy, and I think he was a great talent. I never, competed with him obviously, but I just was a reporter and I got to meet Bubba Ray a few times. He's a really nice guy. And I think he was a guy who did a lot for wrestling. And there's a lot of respect for Bubba Ray Dudley and the whole Bubba Ray and Devon. So I think that's a guy who, I guess the buzz on Bubba Ray Dudley is that he can be a bit boorish or a bit alpha male, but he's a professional wrestler. Why wouldn't he be? And the Dudleys coming back to WWE, I think in 2015, I bought a ticket to go to SmackDown in Providence, Rhode Island, because they were coming, because I cared that much that they caused me to buy a ticket, believe it or not. And they beat the Ascension. And I think that was one of 2 or 3 matches that they won the whole time they were there. That run of, I believe, 2015 Dudleys in WWE was horrible. It just was painful to see them lose match after match to Usos and everybody else. So, anyway, that's the whole goddamn point. Vince McMahon, if you're looking to your wrestling, if you're looking to WWE in particular to teach you morality or to be some consistent thing or some it's not the Hallmark Network, folks. It's the vision of a madman. And so once you've accepted that WWE is the vision of a madman, you can kind of just accept it for what it is, which is, as Vince will call it himself, sports entertainment. Nothing more, nothing less. It's sad that a fan such as myself, with the passion that I had for wrestling, and I just said had for the first time, is distraught or saddened by the lack of WWE. And like a lot of people have suggested, maybe I should start watching New Japan. Maybe I should start watching these other promotions and just see what else is out there. So you can hate me, you can hate the messenger, but just remember, I'm telling you the truth as I see it. Unfortunately, in today's world, the truth can be negotiable, it seems. Which is not the way the truth is supposed to be, but sometimes it feels that way. And I wish you all the best. Obviously, it's fucking raining and so forth. Have a nice fucking weekend, whatever.